I'm likewise starting to question this idea of life purpose. Even though I've spent years living my purpose, it's also only the other week that I actually didn't upload a YouTube video for the first time in 2 years without actually intending to take a break. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't film, I didn't want to speak, and even right now, creating this video, it feels stuck, it feels blocked, it feels like I might not be living my purpose or being authentic or being truthful. But the real fundamental question that actually I'm confronted with is that purpose is potentially, as this questioner pointed out, a bit of a willful self-delusion. Purpose isn't a single thing. You have many purposes, and there are also many different versions of you who have different levels of expression and different lanes of identity depending upon the context. So I'm going to be pretty honest with you and try and share some of the things that I've learned about finding your life purpose. Even as someone who has a very aligned and very so-called authentic life, you need to also be aware of the aspects or the elements of purposelessness or inauthentic relating, experiencing, inauthentic actions and dreams and goals that are nonetheless on a very authentic lane overall. It sounds a bit complex, but fundamentally, I picked out this book from the library and it reminds me of this idea of going from role to soul. This one's by Connie Zweig, who also wrote Meeting the Shadow, which you've seen recommended on this channel before. It's this idea when you're in your later life, especially from the age of 50 onwards, how do you move from compulsive or standardized or otherwise socially encouraged lanes of purpose to a more authentic lane of purpose. And the idea right there from role to soul seems to capture the idea. So I can remember this moment when I was back at university, and it might not be so related, but for me it was a very powerful example of when I saw one of my role models at the time, one of my professors, one of my teachers when I was in my second year of university. I went into her office for the kind of student hours to get some essay feedback, and it was the very end of the day. It was about 7 or 8 o'clock, and I walked in, and because we were friendly and we used to chat, she was very honest and transparent that she didn't want to do the work that she was doing in regards to some kind of administration, and she hit down on the desk and went, "Jordan, I'm a history teacher. I shouldn't be doing all this paperwork. What am I even doing here?" I was like, wow. Whoa. I was struck by it. It wasn't too dramatic, but it was, I'm a history teacher. What am I doing here? Here was someone who had chosen their path of purpose, a very distinguished academic. They'd done original research in a very interesting lane of historical study, and they enjoyed teaching. But that aspect of the bureaucratic paperwork, the internal politics of the university, was so soul-draining, but their role required them to be in that particular paperwork insanity. And how many of us are in moments in our lives where we have a role which is mostly soulful, but at certain aspects, there's very little soul to be found. And it was my first real eye-opening moment because many of the adults I'd seen throughout my teenage years didn't have any soul at all. It was only really when I went to university and started seeing teachers and lecturers and other coaches and different figures out there in the wider world, not my immediate hometown, that I started to believe that there was a possibility of soulful work. But even then, soulful work has aspects of mechanized, routinistic, not very good feelings and arguably very boring tasks that don't feel like it's very purposeful at all. So how do we reconcile this? If you're someone who's already got a pretty good purpose in life, and again, this isn't a video of people who are completely purposeless, that would be more like, well, make your first purpose the healing of the pain so you don't feel so bad, and then focus on careers and creative expression. For the sake of a video that I can film right now that I can actually relate to, we need to focus on this idea of having a role filled with soul, but then also embracing the more soulless aspects and being able to identify that which should end and that which should just be endured because that's part of the human condition. You need to willfully self-delude yourself, but basically, it's strange to say, but the purpose of my teacher in that moment in her office when she's banging down on the desk and saying, "I'm a history teacher, why am I doing all this paperwork?" The paperwork is their purpose because that's what is happening, that's what's required, that is their role, and that is also where their soul can pour in. And if I'm going to bring myself into this video and actually just present myself honestly, It's interesting to notice over the last few months or so, as I've been refining how I want to show up on the internet as a teacher, I've been doing experiments with short form content on different platforms. I've been doing experiments of how I relate and how frequently I relate, how accessible I make my information, how clickbaity potentially I go with my titles, what kind of audience I want to bring in, how often I do things like commenting, what I do with my private client work. There are many different aspects of my wider identity, or at least the identity that I bring online, which I'm bringing into question because I'm interested in the soul aspect, not the role aspect. I'm orienting my purpose towards soul rather than towards role, because I don't just want to be a random online self-development coach. I don't identify as that. I'm more interested in teaching specifically towards trauma work and transpersonal psychology, with many different subdivisions of psychologies and multi-platform, multi-modality ways of basically self-integration. So how do I communicate that? How do I communicate my purpose in life, my desire to share all of this knowledge in a way where I still accept those role-based aspects of doing things that I don't like? To some degree, it's eliminating the things that I don't like. I'm not going to put too much energy, or maybe even very much energy at all, maybe no energy at all, into short-form content, because I feel like my soul leaves my body and it just doesn't feel good. I love one-to-one work. I don't love making 30-second clips that just dissipate, and it's not, you can see my energy's gone. Don't even want to talk about it. But if I start talking about mentorships and I start talking about the actual conversations I'm having with people, the 2-hour conversations of 4 months of working with someone, seeing their past, their present, and their future, and really building something which is valuable and endures for years, that's where I start to switch on. For me, my purpose is teaching, and it's being an embodiment of the teaching, which then means, fortunately and unfortunately, I have a pretty high calibration, kind of auto-calibration, auto-correct when it comes to being off purpose, in the form of doing what other people are doing within the space, or looking for short form, short term, quick win, shortcuts of one form or another. Even within my lane of purpose, I need to be wary of the obstacles, the distractions, diversions, and things which just drain my soul out of my body. Because if we're looking at the question of purpose, and you're reflecting on the question of purpose in your life, there will be times where you need to accept roles. You need to accept limited, not so enjoyable conditions, so that you can then get to the next stage of your identity, next stage of healing, or even just financial goals and basic safety measures. But you should always be trying to pour your soul into the basic role that you experience, and this is most obvious for me in the world of work. When we're typically talking about life purpose, we're talking about work, we're talking about career, and we're talking about ways to be ourselves, whatever that might mean. Again, many sub-personalities and inner child aspects, different archetypes, but let's just call it ourself. We're trying to be ourself in the world in a way where we get to be more of ourself, but then we ask ourselves, well, am I ever a fixed entity? Am I ever a singular creature? Is there ever such a thing as a Jordan which has one particular lane of expression and one style of relating to the world? The answer is obviously no, but we can't have everything. Your purpose can't be unlimited. My purpose can't be so ever shifting that I decide that on one day I'm going to be filming a course and on the next day I'm going to be going and sculpting and painting. I can't do both. You can have different aspects of your life, but if it's your purpose, if it's your main thing that you're doing, it should have enough spaciousness inside for both the high charge, high reward, I love what I'm doing, and also the space for I don't really enjoy this aspect of my purpose, but I need to do it anyway, and yet also the intention to separate out purposelessness within purpose, which is valuable, and that which is merely a distraction. So for me, for example, it's important for me to do my titles and thumbnails for my own videos, but I'm not going to be doing short form content, and I'm especially not going to be going down a path of, hyper-edited videos that are playing to attention spans and doing all kinds of dopamine hits and treat you like you're an idiot with constant 5-second scene changes. And I hate that. I think it's not appropriate for the type of teaching that I'm doing. It might be appropriate for a general self-development video. It's not generally appropriate for trauma work and transpersonally oriented work, so I'm not going to do that, even though that could fit into my path of purpose. Not sure if this is even a useful video for most people unless you are a coach or a content creator, but I'm trying to bring myself through into the video in a way where I'm being honest. If you're struggling with the question of purpose, the greatest practical advice I could give you, rather than a big sentiment about tapping into your soul or connecting with your higher self, is to just accept that you'll never feel on purpose in all aspects of your life all of the time, and there will be significant seasons of your life where you just won't want to do the thing even though you know it is purposeful. And this can apply most obviously if you're a father or a mother, or even if you're showing up for your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, or your wife. There are times where you really don't want to be there for your children or your partner, and there are times where you wouldn't want to do anything other than that. But you're going to shift, and purpose isn't fixed, and your identity that you put into that purpose territory also isn't fixed. There's so many moments where you're not going to feel it, but then you shouldn't be relying on feeling. There's something deeper, and that's what people are indicating with the soulful, I just know they're my partner. I just know that this is my path. I just know that that's my work. But don't rely on always feeling that. And sometimes you do actually, paradoxically, need to have a bit of willful self-delusion that even though you don't feel like it today, or this month, or even for a whole year at a time, you might be on the path of purpose, and you're just getting in your own way already, because how can you ever not be on the path of purpose? Realistically, you've got enough self-awareness to watch a video like this far into a video like this. You're probably quite intentional with the vast majority of your life. You shouldn't be too hard on yourself. But I understand at the same time, and I'm likewise going through the challenges of figuring out how I want to be on my path of purpose for the next 50 or 60 years in this space. But we're not going to get perfect. I don't need to get it perfect. So I'm just going to end the video. See you in the comments. There's another one.